You like things just so. So do we. The Bank of Clark is the bank for that. We all have an inner perfectionist who deserves things done their way. Maybe you like to bank in person. Maybe you prefer to bank online. We get it. From banking to lending to wealth management, we're all about getting things done just the way you like them. We're the bank for that. Find out what banking designed for you is all about. Visit your local Bank of Clark branch today or go to bankofclark.bank. We're the bank for that. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Hello and welcome to All Indians Matter. I am Ashraf Engineer. Over the past few years, digital transactions have grown exponentially. They're easy, they're convenient. For instance, the Bharat Interface for Money Unified Payments Interface, better known as BHIM UPI, but also the Immediate Payment Service or IMPS and the Prepaid Payment Instruments or PPI. So you have a framework for person to person as well as merchant payments in addition to debit cards, credit cards, National Electronic Funds Transfer or NEFT, and real-time gross settlement or RTGS. However, it's the UPI that's on fire and is emerging as the preferred mode of payment for everyone, from teenagers splitting a restaurant bill to rickshaw drivers and vegetable vendors. Payments through UPI accounted for more than half of all digital transactions in India in FY 2021-22, accounting for 52% of the 8,840 crore digital transactions with a value of rupees 126 lakh crore, according to this year's pre-budget economic survey. In FY 2018-19, UPI accounted for only 17% of India's 3,100 crore digital transactions. Let's talk about how UPI has changed financial transactions and, by extension, the larger economy.
All Indians Matter.
We have on the show Rohit Taneja, an IIT graduate who founded Decentro to help businesses reduce financial integration time. He co-founded his first venture, MyPoolin, in 2015. It was one of India's first social payments platforms and a payments infrastructure provider. MyPoolin was acquired by California-based global payments player Wibmo in 2017, which in turn was acquired by Naspers-backed PayU in 2019. Welcome, Rohit.
Hi, Ashraf. Hi, everyone. Good to be on the show.
Rohit, tell us first about how the UPI was conceived and born. Who built it, why, and when did it launch?
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a fascinating story, actually. Let me start by NPCI first. I think a lot of people are not familiar with NPCI, or rather, what NPCI really is as a company. Interestingly, a lot of people think NPCI is a government organization. It's actually not a government organization. Of course, it gets a lot of support from the government, but that's not really how it functions. It's actually a for-profit company, founded by the banks, or rather, with banks as the key stakeholders in the organization itself. And there's a special section under which it has been formed, as a for-profit organization. Now, NPCI has been the infrastructure builder for a lot of the financial technology in the country. Right? So, if you look at probably the oldest one being NEFT, RTGS, right? And then, of course, IMPS, which was the flagship product launched somewhere in the mid 2010s, which eventually led to UPI. Now, since UPI and IMPS come from NPCI, NPCI itself has, I would say, a lot of control on how this product gets delivered, who can access, who cannot access, right, a lot of that stuff. From a building perspective, it actually came around, I would say the concept came around somewhere around 2014-15, which is actually, interestingly, when I had just started MyPoolin as well. Coincidentally, we were able to get in touch with some of the right stakeholders in iSpirit, which were actually thinking about it. So we were able to get, I would say, a first-hand view of, okay, this is how the future can look like. And so it came from a think tank, I would say, a think tank which eventually guided NPCI, saying, okay, this is how you can build UPI on top of IMPS, which is also, by the way, something which a lot of people don't know. UPI is just an abstraction on top of IMPS. Like, it's the same protocol, just a different layer on top. Which is why it was so easy for NPCI, or easier, not so easy, but definitely easier for NPCI to launch it up. So I think that was the first step, and then eventually, of course, NPCI took the flagship. They went ahead with the design implementation, and then, of course, a couple of organizations have been very supportive, and the early torchbearers in terms of building it. Like JustPay, for example, helped a lot in the early UPI development. They also built out the BHIM UPI app, which came out in the market. Yeah, so I think I would say these 3-4 organizations combined together, the think tank, NPCI, and then private organizations like JustPay. Yeah, that's how the UPI got conceived and built out over a couple of years.
Just for the sake, for the benefit of listeners, I just wanted to inform that when you say NPCI is the National Payments Corporation of India.
Yeah.
Right. And what are the benefits? I mean, at a more fundamental level, Rohit,
Mhm.
what are the benefits of digitization of financial transactions for the Indian economy specifically?
Sure, sure, absolutely. I think quite a lot of them, right? I think the first one is of course just financial inclusion, right? I mean, you look at the kind of transactions that are happening on UPI. Literally every micro transaction has become possible on UPI, right? So people are able to pay 5 rupees, 10 rupees for chai, right, and those kind of things. And it's obviously one aspect is just replacing, say, the cash transaction with UPI, but the second is also increasing the velocity of these transactions. Like if you look at a lot of transactions get dropped or get failed purely because there is no payment mode, right, at that particular point. For example, if you don't have cash, you will not be able to buy that tea, right, cup of tea. But what will happen is you'll probably give up on that purchase and then move forward, right, in your journey. But now with UPI, there's no excuse, right? So what ends up happening is your velocity and purchase has become so simple that you end up spending more, right, which is good for the economy overall. So that's one of the major side benefits that UPI has in the overall economy. It's like just accelerating the velocity and increasing the overall quantum of your daily transactions, which obviously is somebody else's income in the ecosystem. And of course, there are public numbers on RBI's website, but I think the growth has been stupendous in terms of just exponentially reaching more than thousands of CRs, right, worth of transactions on a monthly basis. The second one, I think, has been just awakening to the possibilities of payment methods. Right? So, for example, let us say if I am an e-commerce company and I want to accept payments from people in tier 3, tier 4 cities. I don't need to now rely on them owning a debit card or a credit card. As long as they have a UPI handle configured, I can just go ahead and get them live. So that's, I think, a major benefit from a coverage, right? Coverage of customers' point of view. Yeah. These are, I would say, two major benefits to the
But I
overall.
think, Rohit, also when it comes to technology aided financial transactions, there are several pitfalls too. What would you see as the pitfalls in the UPI?
Sure, sure. So you mean pitfalls in terms of like the current design and how it could have been done better, or more
No,
like
I
some?
mean, there's security issues. For example,
Sure,
it's not a flawless system, right? It's not all
sure,
roses
sure,
either.
sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. No, absolutely. I think no, like neither is any other system, right? So every system has, and this is a natural cycle, right? I think you look at technology. I've been in the tech ecosystem. I'm sure you've been in the tech ecosystem, right, for a very long time. You would agree that there's probably an S curve kind of growth, right? That every tech sees. You reach a pinnacle, and then there's some flaws that come in. You improve again, and keep on improving. So it's like an S curve going on an upward slope, right, or a upward slope of growth. That's pretty much how UPI has been, right? So I remember in 2014-15 when UPI had come in, or rather UPI concept paper had come in, it seemed far fetched that all the banks will come together on a common protocol, right, and implement this system across country, right? Uh, but yeah, thanks to RBI, of course, pushing the banks, and then NPCI delivering a great product, it eventually happened. And the first version was very buggy. There were only 3-4 banks that were live, and as you can imagine, some of the largest banks were the latest, like last adopters, right? So you had SBI, HDFC coming at the end, of UPI. So I think really, just like every other tech, it has gone through its own, improvement cycles, iteration cycles as well. For example, right now the common I would say mistakes that happen, or the common security flaws that are there, they're purely social engineering flaws. Like people exploiting each other's UPI ID, or just sending a QR code for receiving money rather than sending money. Those kind of errors that keep on happening, which is a good sign in the sense that the core tech is not compromised. It's actually the behavior of people that has to be optimized, right? So now it's more about education. Okay, the tech is strong. How do we really educate these people to use it in the right way? And same thing, right? Same way we got educated over 5-10 years that you should not share OTPs. Same way now people are being educated that hey, you should not share your MPINs, those kind of things. So I think it's pretty much those last mile, social, I would say, educational aspects of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, Rohit, the UPI is a single ID that allows users to transfer
Yeah,
money through several apps. Now,
yeah,
have we seen such a thing anywhere else in the world? And how is the Indian service unique?
right. Right. Yeah, it's actually one of the earliest. Interestingly, till when UPI came out, we were, I believe, one of the only ones that had this system. across the world. Of course, banning the wallets, which is not technically bank to bank. And many countries have wallets, of course, where you can send from just one single identifier, but ultimately the money remains outside the bank. Right? It's in a wallet.
Correct. And also with UPI, I think you can use several apps, whereas the wallet, you use just
Exactly.
that wallet.
Exactly, absolutely. So I think that interoperability has been very unique. The closest that comes to mind is probably Singapore now, right? With Pay Now, which is what they've implemented. And again, Pay Now has been there for a while, but just the interoperability aspect of Pay Now, with other apps as well as with UPI, that's something which is fairly unique. So they are probably the second one, in this region to catch up to India. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we just had an agreement with them to have interoperability between UPI and Pay Now. Also, Rohit, COVID would have spurred UPI adoption, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, drastically. I mean, we ourselves, of course, were born in COVID as a company, right? So Decentro started pretty much when the pandemic was coming in 3 years ago, and got incubated by Y Combinator, raised capital, all that's happened during COVID. And yeah, we saw it firsthand, how fast the volumes grew, right? And how fast the demand grew, not just on payments, but obviously across the entire banking stack. Yeah, for sure.
And what are the macro factors driving UPI adoption?
I think COVID for sure. That's I would say definitely a large factor. Outside the economy, but definitely something that really impacts the economy massively. From an economic standpoint, just the aspect of digital India, right? The whole ambit of digital India that India has embarked upon, right, in the last 10 years, that has helped a lot, right? So if you look at, it's not just individuals that are adopting UPI; it's also companies that are adopting UPI drastically. And I mean companies adopting amongst themselves, like companies paying each other through UPI. Right?
B2B
So
transactions,
small
essentially.
proprietary. Exactly. And that gets hidden, right? Consumers are not aware of it. It's like completely a black box for them. But it's a massive industry in the back end. So I think that's one thing which has really spurred UPI. The second is just the way our, I would say, political outlook is, right? The way I would say our government is right now emphasizing a lot of these foreign relations, like the way we are making sure that, say, we are put in a good light, right, when it comes to all our neighbors, of course, all the other countries pretty much that we meet with, and wherever we have bilateral ties with, which in turn is helping, India after the image that, okay, UPI is, like I would say, one of the key innovations to come out, right, from the country. And other countries are definitely keen to adopt it. And many of them have praised it publicly, right? I think you might have read Google CEO praising it publicly, right, in the US Senate. So that, I think that is setting a very great benchmark for UPI overall. So that's the second major macro effect, right, that's happening. And third is the increasing penetration of these cross-border transactions. Right? Cross-border has been, I would say, a very ignored kind of a subject in the sense that it has been a very complex kind of a domain for a long time. But it's becoming simpler by the day. Like today, for example, it's fairly drastically simpler for me, or at least 10x simpler for me to send money to a contact in UK as compared to 10 years ago. Right? And because it is drastically simpler, what's happening is even more people are becoming aware that, okay, hey, this is how the Indian financial ecosystem works. Right? Which, of course, UPI has UPI as at the center of it. Right? So, yeah.
And while you briefly touched upon this, I want you to unpack this a little more. Why is UPI important for the bottom of the pyramid?
I think a great way to understand it is with probably an example, right? So let's take a person from the bottom of the pyramid, right? Let's take a migrant laborer who has migrated to Delhi or any one of these tier two, tier one cities, and yeah, he now has to make transactions, using whatever daily wage he gets. Before UPI, I would say the only two ways of doing it was one, of course, cash, and the second was going to say some banking correspondent, or some direct money transfer agent, right, sitting in that city, right, and actually giving him loading the wallet and then sending money back, right? So there are two aspects. One is, of course, his daily life, and second is him sending money back to his house. And both are equally important for him, from a long-term perspective. With UPI, he's able to solve for both. Right? And that's why it's so powerful. So one, for his daily transactions now, he can literally use, say, an Aadhaar biometric or like, of course, most of the people now have very simple smartphones as well. It's very cheap, right, to own a smartphone. Link through his smartphone directly, or ask this DMT agent as well, right, to link his UPI ID or create his UPI ID for him. And it's a one-time effort, right? So it takes like a few minutes, but once it's done, it's done. And then he's able to literally replace cash, of course, everywhere across the ecosystem. Right? So now he's able to accept money using UPI digitally, pay money using UPI locally, for his daily life, as well as send money back, right, to his house. Because most of the remittances are sub 1 lakh. So that way, I think now, if you look at it from that perspective, the bottom of the pyramid literally has become independent in the sense that now this person is not dependent on an external party to live his daily financial life. Right? He's like completely independent. He can decide exactly how he wants to run, his money, when he wants to spend, where he wants to spend, and literally everybody will accept you. Right? So he's not limited in terms of scope, and he's not limited in terms of any dependence on like crutch and something else. That is what is really empowering for him. That's why it's super important for the bottom of the pyramid.
Yep. And according to a study by the Center for Economics and Business Research commissioned by ACI Worldwide, now real-time payments resulted in cost savings of $12.6 billion for Indian businesses and consumers in 2021, and this helped unlock $16.4 billion of economic output, which represent, I think, 0.56% of our GDP, or the output of 2.5 million workers. Talk us through how this efficiency is delivered.
I think one example which I gave you is this the whole domestic money transfer scene, right? So I'll give you an example. So there is we at Decentro, just to give you a very brief view on that, we have APIs, UPI APIs as well, or real-time money transfer APIs, so to say, which allow these domestic money transfer agents to transfer money from bank A to bank B. And the way typically these DMT agents or banking correspondents work is they accept money into a wallet, say like an individual escrow account, and from which the money gets sent right to a destination. And they make a small cut out of it, which is giving you like convenience of loading your money and sending. Just because now we have real-time payments, they don't have to rely on a bank statement or say do a daily reconciliation, which used to consume a lot of manpower. Right? So the view perspective before real-time payments, this DMT agent or this say shop owner had to call up somebody and check for, hey, has the money come in the next day? Right? That's one. Or, which is fairly common in large, especially these trade organizations and organizations with a lot of manpower, they have these accountants which dedicatedly do daily or monthly accounting. Like they literally go through these sheets, Excel sheets or spreadsheets, and just check, okay, hey, where is the money? Where is it? Where is it gone? Basically, human accounting. And this consumes not only like manpower, it also consumes resources in terms of money. Right? Ultimately, you're spending money on these guys. That's the, I would say, number one efficiency that has been taken off the charts, right? So now I don't really need an accounting team, or I don't really need to check my bank statements, ask somebody to check my bank statements. Because real time, I know the money has been paid, I get an SMS or I get a confirmation on my application, right? So that's really how this efficiency is getting delivered, both on a consumer level as well as a business. Okay? Now you can extrapolate this at, say, large aggregate e-commerce transactions. Let us say, we are Amazon or Flipkart. Now, an Amazon or Flipkart before real-time payments had the same problem. And so they also had to wait for, say, card settlements to come in the next day. Right? And they also have like done massive accounting team just waiting for this reconciliation to be completed. Right? And by the way, reconciliation is like such a huge problem that people, like literally large e-commerce companies, most of them have shared it publicly as well. They bleed money on a monthly basis due to purely poor reconciliation. Like money got missed out and it never got reconciled properly, and then somebody has extra and somebody else got less. These are things which real-time problems solve for. So real-time payments solve for. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that we often talk about ease of doing business, but this is actually ease of consumption also.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
What about the aspects? What about its impact on government service delivery? Is there an implication there?
Absolutely. Yeah, subsidies is a great example there, right? So we've talked about this private side. Now, from a subsidy perspective, right? If I take the same migrant labor example, just him receiving that capital into his account, right, has become so simple that he just needs to give his identifier, either UPI ID or the Aadhaar number. If he's, say, using the Aadhaar enabled payment system, which is also a great, pretty much real-time money movement enabler. So, given that has become, like from a consumption standpoint on the private side, similarly on the receiving standpoint from a subsidy side, right, it is almost equivalent to just say remembering one single ID and sharing to the government that okay, hey, everything that I need can just be sent to this particular ID and can be sent to this particular account. And for the government, again, the reconciliation from a month-end standpoint or a daily standpoint becomes equivalently simple as well. Right? That's the efficiency that's coming in, on the subsidy level as well.
Now, what about the sensitivity of the individual's information, privacy concerns? I know we touched upon that briefly earlier, but if you could detail that a bit.
Yeah, actually, I think UPI, if you look at it, right, the good thing is it does not expose your account number or say the mobile number directly. Right? So most people confuse it, by thinking that okay, UPI actually is making it easier for hackers to access you. Right? It only makes it easier if you're not smart enough to figure out okay how to share, for example, then how to use your account, right? So as long as you follow the basic hygiene practices in terms of just maintaining your account, that's it. That's all that is required from a security standpoint. For example, if I do a peer-to-peer transaction with you right now, I think the only thing that you will see in your receipt will be my name and my UPI ID, right? And that does not allow anybody to do anything with my account. It just allows people to send money with it. And it's the bare minimum personal information, right, that can be shared from an individual standpoint. As compared to a bank transfer, right? In a bank transfer, you actually are able to make out the full bank account number as well, right, of the person. So I think that way, as I said, right, since it's an abstraction built on top of IMPS protocol, it actually is exposing less information at a personal level. And that's why it's actually more secure, from a security standpoint.
Rohit, it is estimated that India's digital payments industry will grow to more than 300% of its current size by 2025. What do you think that landscape will look like?
I think 2025 is fairly close, right? So if you look at it, the key thing that's going to be prominent, right, in the next 2 years, one is, of course, just people adopting UPI more and more, which is already happening. Interestingly, it's also happening across instruments. Like, for example, a lot of people are not aware that they can now link their overdraft account or loan account as well, right? Or say a credit card, right? So starting with UPI credit card, you can actually link your credit card to a UPI habit. What that means is I can actually use the same UPI payment method instead of swiping my credit card, right? And still get the benefits of the credit in the backend. So it's almost as good as credit on UPI, right, through a different channel. So I think this is going to be increasingly common. Like, this is one major trend which I see, that is people adopting credit on UPI or more form factors on UPI as compared to simple UPI savings, right, which is already happening for a while. UPI Autopay is a great example there. So people subscribing to say newspapers, to your regular Doodwala, iron guy,
Utility bills?
any regular, exactly, right? Just subscribing to UPI Autopay and then forgetting it. And just the money keeps on getting doubled, right? So I think that's another level of convenience that's going to become so common in the next 2 years. And then I think the third thing which will be very interesting is, of course, depending on how fast countries adopt it, but using this UPI say abroad. Right? Me actually using UPI in Singapore, in France, in Egypt, wherever. Yeah, that's going to become increasingly common as well.
So almost like a global, payment system.
Yes,
that you.
absolutely.
So I want to actually come back to the bit about rural India, and this time I just want to shift the question a little bit.
Sure.
Is UPI changing the way rural India accesses banking and financial services? If yes, how? And if not, how do you see it happening going forward?
It is, but not at the pace at which we think it is. So I think, of course, we covered the examples of how the migrant labor benefits from it. But if I look at, say, a regular rural person who's sitting at home, sitting in his village, and going about his daily life, for him to really get impacted by UPI, he has to first, of course, get educated on, say, how to adopt it in the first place. And that's where the government and, of course, RBI and PCI have pushed a lot in terms of multiple methods of adopting UPI. Right? So, for example, one is the common method that you and I know, which is just downloading an app, setting it up on the phone, using your debit card, etc. It's easy for us because we have been using these kind of apps for a while, but it's not easy for somebody in rural India. And that's where either they have to say be assisted in that journey, and that's where DMT agents help out. Right? So there are a lot of these DMT agents, banking correspondents, and even the local bank RMs, which actually help these consumers access UPI, set up UPI for the first time. So that's definitely an uphill climb. It's not going to be, I would say, like a hockey stick. When it comes to rural India, it's going to take a while for them to get used to it because it's a completely new form factor for them. The second way they're getting help is the Aadhaar enabled payment system. Just like using Aadhaar, registering for UPI, and then accessing it. So these are two form factors. But once the form factor is done, the second thing which is critical, which really makes sure that UPI gets embedded in the daily life, is your habit. Like how habitual are you in using UPI, and what's the kind of daily spend you do, right? And that's where the uphill climb, of course, is longer because once you do that, like there are not many avenues in the rural landscape to actually use UPI. So, of course, unless they actually go outside into a city and then they have to pay somewhere, or they're shopping for something, which is again not that common yet. So, unless those side services increase, which is your consumption, spending, avenues increase, it will take a while, for UPI, of course, to get penetrated at that level. So it's going to be like a chicken and egg situation, and that's where it's very important for both sides. I would say the cycle to move together. The spending avenues have to reach there, and as well as these pushes from adoption or the form factor of just adopting UPI has to be there as well. Yeah, it has to go hand in hand. That's how it is. Really get it.
Tell us about Decentro. How did it happen? What has been its journey so far?
Yeah, so Decentro, very simply put, we are a financial infrastructure enabler. So what we do is we help companies adopt fintech solutions, integrate with banking solutions in very simple APIs and SDKs. For example, if you are a gaming company or if you are a lending company, right, you need some sort of real-time payments protocol or real-time payment APIs, right, to process, collect money, settle money, and all those things. That's the lower level. And then, of course, as you go up in the value chain, at some point of time, you also need banking solutions like credit. You might want to issue cards, those kind of things as well. So that's essentially what we need. So we are, I would say, in a way, building this foundation for companies to embed finance and banking. It's been now little under 3 years overall as a company. And yeah, we started, of course, during the pandemic. Has been a very, very, very interesting journey. Seeing this entire last 2 years, right, of hyper growth, right, in the ecosystem, and we've grown really well as well. We process millions of transactions pretty much on a weekly basis across UPI, IMPS, a bunch of protocols. And we have, I think, close to now 350 companies using us across India. These are both fintechs, non-fintechs who are trying to use financial solutions. Yeah, and it's been now, I think, over two series of funding. Series A, which is closed, and looking at it, scaling up the ecosystem now further from, say, 350 to like 1,000 companies on the data number.
So, Rohit, here's a question I ask all my guests at the end of the show. Why do you do this work?
Sure. I think, of course, different people have different reasons of starting out or like solving a problem. It has been it's a personal problem that I wanted to solve, just like the previous company. Right? So, to give you a background, the previous company, MyPoolin, which was there, started in 2014-15, it had the same problem of integrating these payments APIs from the banks. Right? And we were consuming something from a private sector bank in 2015. And I remember it took us 6 months just to integrate that API and go live. So that was like a initial trigger for me that, okay, it's fairly complex. It's not that easy as it seems. And then fast forward to 2019-20, when this company got acquired by a large group, PayU. I was handling a similar integration for PayU back in the day. And I noticed that those guys took, we as a team took 8 months doing that similar integration with a different microwave. And that was like a final trigger where it dawned upon me, it's like not just a problem that small companies face, it's also a problem that every large company faces as well. And yeah, we want to solve it for ourselves. Why not solve it for the world and build a company out of it? So that's essentially how this will work.
Rohit, thanks so much for being on the show and helping us understand UPI better.
Right, for sure. I'm happy to help. And yeah, for people that want to interact more with Decentro, learn more about us, of course, use any of our services, just drop us a hi on hello@decentro.tech or personally to me at rohit@decentro.tech. Always happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you all for listening. Please visit allindiansmatter.in, that's ALLINDIANSMATTER.in, for more columns and audio podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter at Ashraf Engineer, that's ASHRAFENGINEER, and All Indians Count, that's ALLINDIANSCOUNT. Search for the All Indians Matter page on Facebook. On Instagram, the handle is All Indians Matter. Email me at editor@allindiansmatter.in. Catch you again soon.